My husband and I, both in our 30s, have a toddler son together named Max. Max is a sweet kid, but he has difficulty in unfamiliar situations and can easily get overstimulated. A little while ago, my husband was on a work trip across the country while I was home with Max. I received a call one morning from his manager informing me that my husband had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. He couldn't tell me much, but he did say that although he was stable, it didn't look good, and that I should come as soon as I could. I was in a state of panic and immediately booked a last-minute ticket for myself, as it would have been nearly impossible to travel with Max. I also called my mom, who lives a few hours away, and asked her to come watch Max while I was away. At this point, I needed someone to watch Max for the time it would take for my mom to arrive so I could make my flight. Looking back, I probably could have handled the logistics better, but I was hysterical and just doing things as I thought of them. I called 3 friends, but one didn't answer and the other 2 couldn't help. Luckily, we live close to my brother and sister-in-law, who have a daughter named Sarah, who is almost an adult. We are very close to them. Finally, Sarah answered the door and informed me that her parents were out. I explained the situation and asked if she would be able to watch Max for a couple of hours until my mom arrived. It's worth noting that Sarah babysits for a few local families and charges for her services. We had never asked Sarah to babysit before. She showed some concern for my husband, and when I asked her again, she said something along the lines of, "Well, you'll pay me, right?" I usually charge X. I was taken aback by her response, and then my friend who didn't answer earlier called me back and said she would be happy to watch Max. I took Max and left without saying anything to Sarah. I coordinated with my friend and my mom, and then I flew to see my husband. He ended up needing surgery, but thankfully he is making a full recovery. A few days after he was able to fly home, we had dinner with my brother and sister-in-law. We talked about the accident, and I mentioned that I had asked Sarah to watch Max. I also noted that I was slightly upset that she had brought up payment. My brother was surprised and said he would talk to her, as that's not an appropriate reaction. However, my sister-in-law interjected and said that she was proud of Sarah for advocating for herself. We argued, and she said that I was entitled to be surprised that Sarah asked for money. Just to be clear, if I was asking Sarah to babysit under normal circumstances, I would expect to pay her. It was unsettling that Sarah would bring up payment while, for all I knew, my husband was in the hospital on the other side of the country. I think it would have been more empathetic for her to bring up the topic of payment after I returned and confirmed that my husband was okay. My sister-in-law is still cold towards me, as is my niece. Am I wrong for getting upset? Everyone's the idiot here. Sarah's a teenager. All she did was ask for payment for babysitting. Socially flawless? No, but again, teenager. People, including in emergencies, will pull crap. Like, you should have mentioned it beforehand when someone asked to be paid after the fact. You are the idiot. You were upset and worried and didn't answer. Then went about your business. Your responsibility was to find childcare for your child, even in an emergency, including paying for it when needed. I understand why you reacted that way in the heat of the moment, but to continue to bear a grudge for a teen negotiating the terms of a labor agreement is unreasonable. Not the idiot. My aunt refused to babysit my brother and me when our dad was possibly dying. This was 20 years ago. My mom's relationship with her never recovered. The niece needs to learn the time and place to advocate for herself. People say we don't owe others anything, but you do. You owe them empathy if you expect to be part of a family unit. Do you mean people behaving as if they were in a civilized society? Where do you help others just because it's the right thing to do? That is missing more and more. Yes, you advocate for yourself when someone mistreats you. However, being asked to help family in an emergency is not being mistreated. It's part of being in a functioning family unit. Alternate universe. Opie's husband tragically passes away. Her niece says so about my pay. I charge $25 an hour, and it took Grandma 3 hours to get here. I'm so sorry for your loss, but I can't afford to incur any losses. I've got school supplies to buy, you know? It was an emergency, a one-off thing, and the kid is family. For God's sake, your niece sadly lacks empathy and decency, as does your sister-in-law. I'll bet if she had agreed, you would have done something nice for her upon your return. Glad your husband will be okay. We were visiting my in-laws, and my sister-in-law told me about the books she's recently read and bought, as we both like reading. I've read some of the books, and I wasn't sure if she should be reading them as she's a teen, and some of them are pretty explicit and don't exactly have the healthiest romances. I don't think she should be reading 50 Shades either. I told my husband about the books and he told his parents. My mother-in-law asked me to point out which ones I knew were too mature for her, and she confiscated them. My sister-in-law is mad at me because she isn't going to get the books back, as my mother-in-law is planning to donate them. And she's no longer allowed to buy whatever books she wants. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot, but in a rather sad way. You could have used your fear of her developing an unhealthy image of romance as an opportunity to talk to her about that exact issue. If you wanted her to be safe, you should have used your relationship with her to educate her on why these books might portray an unhealthy image, and advise her to read cautiously. You won't be able to control what she consumes, not just on the internet and social media, but in life. However, you threw away the opportunity to be her guide. Now you've taken away not only her books, but also her trust in you. Not to mention, by forbidding her from reading these books, you've only made them more enticing. She's already read most of them, so what good does it do to confiscate them now? OP, don't be surprised if she doesn't trust you again after this. I suggest you give her an apology and a Kindle. Oh Lord, she's a teenager who enjoys reading. You should be grateful for that alone. And let me reiterate, she's a teenager. She most likely has access to the internet. And excuse me for being blunt, but if she wants to read or write smut fiction, she will find a way to do so. In school, she might be reading classics like Pride and Prejudice or To Kill a Mockingbird. Speaking of unhealthy romances, am I right? And despite all of this, she still enjoys reading. So let her read and give her back the books or replace them. You need to apologize. What is wrong with you all? I'm disgusted and angry. Welcome to never having a relationship with your sister-in-law again. And on top of that, you may have just caused a rift in your sister-in-law's relationship with her mother. Censorship is harmful, and you've now taught a teenager to hide her interests and hobbies for the rest of her life. Fiction does not equal reality. You're foolish if you believe otherwise. My brother passed away when his only child, a teenage girl, was 1 year old. I know we should have been more involved in her life, but since we live in different cities, we didn't have much contact with her, especially because she's shy and doesn't like talking on the phone. However, a few months ago, her mother called and asked for our help since she was pregnant again with her 4th child. She said it was a tough pregnancy and asked if we could take care of our niece for a while, and we agreed. So she's been staying with me and my siblings and only goes home for a few days each month. The problem is that while she misses her mother and siblings and wants to go home, she always comes back upset. When I asked her why, she always mentioned how her mother treats her differently compared to her siblings. The baby has been born for a few weeks now, and things have only gotten worse for my niece. So I suggested that we keep her with us and made some excuses about not wanting her to change schools. I also told her mother that it would be better for her to focus on the new baby. She agreed, but we did have an agreement that our niece would go home for Christmas. The problem is, I don't want to send her home for Christmas. I know she'll miss her siblings, but I don't want her to end up upset again. And from what I've heard, her last Christmases weren't good either. So I made a suggestion she couldn't resist. I told her if she stayed for Christmas, we'll buy her a gaming system of her choice. She agreed to stay. Her mom has been calling and texting my siblings and calling us all idiots. So she wanted to go home. Her family wanted her to go home, and you bribed her to stay with you over Christmas for a gaming system. You are the idiot for bribing her. But her mom is in a bad environment. Have you tried to talk with her mom to remedy this? Ultimately, a teen is old enough to decide for herself, but it's incredibly immature of you to bribe her into staying away from her family. You're very vague about her mistreatment. For all we know, she's upset that there's a new baby at home and the attention is less on her. That's normal and not mistreatment. If something unsafe is happening, go through the courts and get legal physical custody and guardianship. If you keep her without permission, her mom could call the cops on you. Don't bribe her to stay. Figure out what's going on and be an adult about how you handle it. Not the idiot. Having been in this situation myself, I only wanted to go home because I continuously held hope that seeing me after X amount of time would change the way I was treated. It didn't. Oh, there were hugs and smiles for the first few minutes, for show, in my opinion. But as soon as the initial welcome home was over, I was the maid and the punching bag. Thank you for caring about this young lady, who I feel needs a strong support system, and you're doing all you can to support her. I wish her the best. I, 28 female, live with my friend and roommate, 30 female, in a flat that I own. We've been friends for almost a decade and have lived together a few times over the years. When I bought my place, she asked to move in. It was a good deal. She gets to save by paying reduced rent, and I get some help with the mortgage. My friend is also from a super religious family. She doesn't follow a lot of her family's beliefs now, such as premarital sex and drinking. Her parents have accepted this, but asked that she keeps that part of her life hidden. The problem started when my friend found out that she was pregnant from a one-night stand and decided to keep the baby. Her parents disowned her, and she was heartbroken but not surprised. I told her that I was okay with her continuing to pay rent here and live with me for as long as she needed. She gave birth to her baby boy Alan a few months ago. Around 2 months ago, her parents got back in touch and told her they'd like to see her. She has many younger siblings she helped raise, so she was super excited to go and see them. But they asked her not to take the baby as they didn't want to be involved with him. So I offered to look after Alan while she saw her siblings, thinking it would be a one-time deal. So now she visits them almost every weekend and sometimes during the week, often staying overnight while I look after Alan. I didn't mind too much to begin with. He's a very good baby, and I love hanging out with him. But Alan got sick last weekend, just before she left to stay at her parents' house for the night. And after his temperature got super high, I took him to the hospital. It took her 6 hours to answer her phone, and she still didn't come to the hospital for another 3. Her parents live an hour away. I felt so powerless when Alan was sick because I'm not his mom or guardian, and the hospital had regulations about how much I could do for him and be with him. Although he's better now, I'm worried about looking after him again. She asked me to take care of him again this weekend, and I lost it. I explained that she had really put me in a horrible position while he was ill, and if she didn't give me some sort of guardianship or medical rights over him, I wouldn't be watching him again. She cried and said that I'm holding her hostage now by giving her an ultimatum that means she can't see her parents if she doesn't agree to provide me with rights to her son. And now I feel like I may be the idiot. Well. Okay, first, not the idiot, not even close. She takes 6 hours to reply. I cannot under any circumstances imagine a scenario when I'm still breathing and it takes me that long to check my phone when one of my kids is with a babysitter. Second of all, if she doesn't see how dangerous this situation could have been for her son, that's a problem. It's great that she's trying to reconnect with her family, but she's a mother now, and she can't just leave her kid every weekend to hang out with people who want to pretend that he doesn't exist. That isn't healthy. That's neglect. Honestly, I think you're focusing on the entirely wrong thing here. Your friend found out her baby was in the hospital and didn't care. Does that sound healthy to you? Is that the kind of person you want to live with? You really need to ask yourself exactly how involved you want to be here, because your friend sounds like a horrible parent, and you taking care of this baby is just covering up that fact. Do you imagine yourself babysitting this kid every weekend 6 years from now? 10 years? Until you're bled dry? She's willing to abandon her son for days. Her parents are horrible too. They're successfully erasing her kid from their perfect life. They don't even want to see her child and would rather she hide her baby's existence. She sucks for allowing herself to be manipulated by her family, and her family is majorly toxic. I'm surprised the hospital didn't call CPS when Alan was sick. It became clear that Mom wasn't responding after the baby had been in the hospital for hours. It's just a matter of time before CPS becomes aware of the neglect by the mom. I'm a mother of a teen daughter, Kelly. Her biological father left when she was 4. It's complicated, but despite him being away, he still sent money or had his family help from time to time. I still struggled to raise her until I met my now husband, Christopher. Christopher is like a father to Kelly. He's the only father figure she's had. However, I found out that she's reconnected with her biological father through his family, specifically his mother, which I wasn't happy about, but didn't make a fuss about. Then she started mentioning him often, visiting him while canceling plans to hang out with us, etc. Her justification is that her father is sick and may be terminal. I say maybe because she's a child and may not fully understand the gravity of the situation. So she sees him at his friend's house where he's currently staying. Christopher and I were planning her birthday party at our house. Kelly told me she'd like to have her biological father come over to celebrate, since he may not be able to be around next year. Christopher immediately said no. He said he wouldn't allow that man to come into our house, which made Kelly cry. She said that we were robbing her of her last chance to make memories with her father after finally reconnecting with him. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable having him come to the house and being in the same room as him. Her stepsister said that Christopher and I were overreacting, and that Kelly wanted her father to participate in her birthday so badly. So Christopher left the house, and I snapped at Kelly and threatened to cancel the whole thing. Later, when we calmed down, I suggested that she go celebrate with him, but she said her friends and their parents wouldn't be able to attend. She also said he couldn't throw her the party since he was sick. We had another argument, and she started ignoring Christopher and me while staying in her room. She's saying she won't forgive me if I let her father miss what could be her last birthday with him. Am I being unreasonable, or is she? You are the idiot. This isn't about you. Your daughter has reconnected with her father and wants him in her life for as long as he's alive, which may not be very long at all. I understand you have resentment towards him, but according to your account, he has helped with financial support throughout your daughter's life. If this is the hill you want to die on, be prepared for your relationship with your daughter to suffer greatly. Also, she's not a toddler, and she does understand what terminal means. Would you still feel the same way if he weren't terminal, but just the man who left his child and went years without contact, only providing the bare minimum of financial support? Illness doesn't change the core of a person. The only difference is that it may push people to seek forgiveness before death in hopes of absolution for their transgressions. Basically, it's all well and good that he wants to reconnect on the emotional side. But what about the rest of it? Not the idiot, OP. You're well within your rights to feel uncomfortable and resentful around him and not want him in your home. But this is a young adult, not a child. Also, she has every right to reconnect with her dad. And you, OP, have zero right to be upset about it. I say this because as it comes across, this is the thing you have a problem with. Not so much the birthday, but the reconnecting in general. OP, you don't have to like the guy. Pfft, heck, you don't even have to speak with him. But it would behoove you to be the bigger person here.